hunting has changed my perspective on ethics of life. It's changed my perspective completely. So I've been hunting for about 4 years, and okay, let me backtrack a bit there. I've actually started hunting when I was maybe like 7 or 8 years old. Started at that time with just some squirrel hunting. I ran around with my grandfather while he did some raccoon hunting with dogs, and there were other forms of hunting and fishing being done, but I mostly just squirrel hunted at that point. When I squirrel hunted then, it wasn't about eating the squirrel or about much more than just trying to do something that my father liked doing. I gave all the squirrels to my grandfather, and he would eat those squirrels, but it really didn't feel the best because, you know, to me, when I was shooting them, it was of course exciting, but I wasn't participating beyond that point. And then when I was about 21 years old, my father moved back to our hometown in Indiana, and I was seeking a way to kind of rebuild our relationship, and I always did have that interest in hunting. So I asked him to start deer hunting with me again, because he took me a few times when I was a kid, but deer hunting requires a great amount of patience that children typically, at least I did not have. And so 21, I started hunting deer, and it went great. I started with a compound bow, a bow that I got from my uncle. He gave it to me for free. It was like from the 1980s, and I told myself that I was not going to buy a bow until I killed an animal with this bow. It was very antique type of bow. It was barely held together, but I managed to kill a deer with it, and it worked just fine. I got the job done. I bought myself a better compound bow, and I continued hunting with the bow. I believe maybe I got another one that year with my bow, and then gun season came in, and I was always fond of shooting guns, and I killed a doe with that. Archery was a different story though. Our guns are one thing to pick a single point based on where you place some crosshairs and shoot. I always did favor iron sights over a scope though. With archery, you know, it's something you actually need to invest some time into. With modern bows, not as much, and I have only killed deer with a compound bow. I have taken out my recurve a few times, but not even had an opportunity to take a shot with it. I do feel that through my last 4 years of deer hunting, that maybe the most ethical way that I did take an animal's life, a deer's life, was with a gun. Although I think that anyone that would speak against hunting would say that it makes it too easy to use a gun. It's actually difficult no matter what, but the gun just has a little bit more of a promise of a successful hunt. You can be more accurate with it, and you can also shoot at further distances, but it of course does quite a bit of damage. So what I typically am killing deer with is a 20 gauge shotgun. I've shot a lot of deer with a bow that have gotten away. A lot, I don't know, like 5-7 deer that have probably gotten away from me after shooting them with a bow. I've shot them confidently with 2 arrows and seen both arrows hit a deer once, and I was aiming right for the sweet spot that's behind the shoulder, but I must have hit him twice in the shoulder, and that's something that will always stick with me that evening there. But somebody asked me, or someone commented that they're interested in hearing about my take on hunting, or not necessarily my take, but how I go about hunting, and how that involves doing it ethically. it's not it's not easy to kill an animal always. It's hard to, especially the first few times. Actually, maybe the first few times it was a little bit easier, but then it kind of began to sink in. But it's actually there was a point where it got especially hard to kind of, choose an animal to kill. But now it's not that I don't necessarily feel bad about choosing an animal, but it's something that I don't take super lightly. I kill 2 or 3 deer a year, and I fill my freezer with that meat, and I give it to friends, and it's my main source of meat throughout the year. I consume a lot of venison. The good thing about venison is that typically if you see that on the market is that it's a higher priced meat. It's incredibly good for you. It's lean, and it tastes great. A lot of people have tasted venison and not had great experiences, but it's all in the preparation. If you're looking to cook some venison in the future, just make sure you use enough oils and fats. I love butter, so use enough butter. Whenever you kill a deer, that's just the first step of the hunt, or first step of that process after you've shot a deer. And then you have to field dress it, which involves removing its intestines and heart, and you can keep its heart and liver and the tastier organs, but removing the things that you don't want, leaving them out, dragging that deer from whatever distance you are from a vehicle, then loading the deer up in a vehicle, taking it home, keeping it cold, hanging the deer, and then maybe if you don't want to butcher it yourself, you take it to a butcher, you pay for that, and then you need a place to store that meat. So there's a lot after that. But before then, most of the time when you're hunting, you're sitting in a tree or sitting on the ground and doing quite a bit of waiting. So even with a gun, during gun season, I've went an entire season without having success, and so it's never easy. And actually, I'm kind of interested in ways that we can make that easier. So I don't believe that it's necessarily the best to make it the most difficult thing possible, because in which some people are maybe advocates of that participate in ethical hunting, but I don't think it's about making it difficult or giving the animal a fair chance. I think it's about the method, the mindset behind it. It's not about making it as hard as you can so that the animal actually stands a chance. The animal has a lot of advantages that we don't have. It can smell you from across the field. I've been winded by deer many a time. I can hear you, just a small creak in my tree stand, and a deer will run out of there. They jump before an arrow shot. They hear the bullet shot, and they do move even seemingly before the bullet gets to them. So animals have a lot of advantages that we don't. So I don't believe it's about making it as hard as you can, and that's why actually it's something I've been debating about for myself lately, is how I can make it easier, so then I can spend my time preparing the meat and doing a lot of other things more carefully, not having to spend all my time in the woods, because I've probably spent hundreds of hours in trees without actually seeing anything. And that's been great. It's actually been a great opportunity to do some meditation or reflection or contemplation. But the time could have been spent on developing some other skills, or even practicing shooting my bow, because a lot of times you just want to shoot. You just want to take that shot, and it might go a little while without actually getting an opportunity. So that's my last 4 years of hunting, and kind of a little summary of it. I don't choose to take only bucks or does, or I try not to choose anymore. I'll share one more story here, is that there was an opportunity I had to shoot a buck, a 6-pointer buck, which is still bigger than the average buck that I've shot. But I didn't take it, and that deer stood in front of me at about 20 yards for probably 10 minutes. And I even managed to take a video of it because I had my phone on me, and doing in some of its natural things, like putting its like they stick their eyeballs in limbs, and they excrete things. They're always scraping up the ground, and they do a lot of signaling to each other. But that deer stood in front of me for 10 minutes, and I chose not to shoot it because I was told before that in that same area, and the day before on some cameras, that there were 8 large bucks roaming around there. And I chose not to shoot that one, the 6-pointer, because I was hoping one of those larger ones would come my way. I've never even seen a big deer before I've killed an 8-pointer, but it was not necessarily a large one. Never seen that live, big deer. But it kind of haunts me, that memory does, because I actually maybe only got 2 deer that year, and I like to try to get 3, and I could have had that 3rd, and it seemed that deer was presented to me, and I had every opportunity, the perfect shots, and I chose to go with some ego thought versus what was being presented to me. And that's a different perspective on hunting than I've seen a lot of people have. I've heard the silly things like, if it's brown, it's down. People just want to go out there blasting. That's why it's a little intimidating going on public lands during gun season. But yeah, so I'm curious if you guys have any different takes on hunting. If it's something you've been thinking about, maybe it's some other things you may want to hear about me and my hunting experiences. I'm interested in getting to some other deer or other animals other than deer. I currently just hunt squirrels and deer, and I would shoot a rabbit too if I had the chance, but not a chance with my bow walking around. But yeah, so let's talk soon.